Janice, thanks a lot for sitting down with us for our Cleveland Care Connection interview series.
My pleasure, Brian.
I really appreciated the meeting that we had a couple of weeks back and the opportunity to learn more, and I thought it was a very worthy subject for the series. And
thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you setting aside some additional time to let us capture a conversation and share it.
Happy to.
Thank you. So we're sitting down with Janice Zeigel, and we're here with the Senior Transportation Connection. So I guess, for starters, from sort of the bird's eye view, how do you summarize and explain what the service is?
Sure. So Senior Transportation Connection is a nonprofit organization. We were founded 10 years ago with the sole mission of providing affordable, accessible, and high-quality transportation for senior adults living in our community. Oftentimes, older adults want to live independently. They don't want to burden their children or bother their children to go to an appointment, and that's where we come in, providing a different kind of independence for older adults living in the community.
Okay. And to better define the community, how large of a geographic area?
Sure. So currently we operate in Cuyahoga County, specifically 26 suburban municipalities, as well as the city of Cleveland and a number of nonprofit partners.
Okay.
On a daily basis, we're delivering between 500 and 550 rides per day.
Okay. And the range of destinations that you might
Sure,
take
absolutely.
To,
well,
you know?
I'm sure you can appreciate, Brian, that older adults need to go wherever you and I need to go.
Right.
Medical appointments, the grocery store, the hairdresser, the post office. About a third of our trips are medically related. About a third are community and senior centers. And a third is pretty much everything else, those individual trips to hairdressers and grocery stores and wherever people need to go.
So it's not that it has to be something medical in nature. I mean, there's certainly maybe a greater sense of urgency or need around that, but also just to help people have ongoing engagement and continue to do the things they love.
Absolutely. And it's so important because we know, and research shows, that people who are socially isolated really increase their risk of premature death. So being able to get out and about and socialize and engage in activities, we transport a number of individuals for volunteer opportunities. So it really does enhance their independence and their socialization.
Well, and I think to give people a sense of the importance of this service, you shed some light on how significant of an issue it truly is in terms of people not being able to drive. And can you elaborate a little bit on that? I mean, as far as people's misconceptions versus the reality.
Absolutely. Clearly one of the most difficult decisions individuals make is giving up the car keys.
Yeah.
And we exist to make that an easier process for older adults. AARP did a study not too long ago that indicated that men will outlive their ability to drive safely by 8 years, and for women it's 10 years. So what happens in that 8 to 10 year period for individuals if they don't have good transportation options? On a personal note, I am a caregiver for my 91-year-old father and 89-year-old mother, who can no longer drive. And I understand personally what that means for them and their ability to get out of the house, go shopping, go to medical appointments, etc. So it's a challenging experience in your older years, but we exist to still maintain that level of independence for older adults.
Well, and that really was, something that stood out, that idea of potentially a decade of life, right? That
Sure.
To the degree that people feel the weight of that decision as a turning point in their life, and it is, right?
It certainly is.
But that's not the same as saying it's over, and 8 to 10 years is an awful long time to feel like, you're trapped and can't
Sure.
continue to live your life. Because I would think that physical overall health, and vision aren't necessarily, you know what I mean,
Of course.
interlocked in that way.
And there are many reasons that older adults may need to give up driving. I mean, it could be as simple as arthritis that limits your range of motion in your neck to be able to safely operate a vehicle.
Okay.
There's also limitations in older adults being able to use public transportation. And growing up in the Cleveland area, we drive. We don't extensively use public transportation. Right. So it's a difficult transition to make if you stop driving to all of a sudden think you can use public transportation. The difference also with our service is we are very customer focused. Our drivers are very well trained, and they provide as much physical assistance as an individual may need to board the bus, to carry the grocery bags, to really be an assistant to that individual.
Well, and I want to make sure I'm not burying the lead on another important detail. Can you elaborate on what people can expect as far as cost and of these services?
Sure, absolutely. So the way our service operates is we contract with those 26 cities and nonprofits who foot most of the bill for the service.
Yeah.
There is a small copay for the individual. Typically that's in a $2 to $3 range. It does vary by community, but that's pretty much a ballpark. So there is a copay from the individual.
Right.
But we work to make that system and our system overall, first of all, customer focused, secondly, cost efficient.
Well, and yes, that I think when you're talking about an average cost of $2 to $3 for a ride, I don't know of anything that comes close. I mean, again, maybe the bus, but to your point, we don't have that sort of. It's not a very well established system, certainly
Exactly.
depending on where you live and where you're trying to go.
Of
in
course.
particular. One of the things that I've seen promoted when it comes to your service is that concept of how high tech meets high touch, and that's something that sticks to the brain for sure when I think of the company. But can you explain what that stems from?
Absolutely. So I describe STC as a comprehensive provider of transportation services, and by that I mean once we know an older adult is in need of our services, and that's a simple registration process. That older adult calls our 1-800 number. They talk to one of our call center staff who are using a pretty sophisticated software system. Our system remembers the rider. We remember the last 5 destinations they went to, so we can easily and quickly schedule the trip for them. Once that's done, we manage the technology to build routes that are highly efficient. Keeping in mind, we need to get people to their appointments on time. The high touch part of that service is that driver providing that high level of physical assistance, taking note of that individual's condition that day.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to report things if we know them. So we have connections in the community if our driver notices something with an individual that may not be quite right. So we ensure there's a follow-up. I always say, Brian, it's more than a ride.
Right.
It's a safety check, it's a safety net, and we take that responsibility very seriously.
Well, yeah, so it feels like you have that foundation there of focusing first and foremost on the individual, on their unique needs, and paying attention to changes in that and what's
Sure.
going on. And at the same time, you're supporting that with efficiency, right? That I think, that there's that sense a lot of times that with high tech, with, the use of those tools, that there's then a degree of separation between you and the individual.
Exactly.
And I think from what you've shared and what you've shown me when I was here before as well, that you use those tools, again, for the purpose of efficiency, and that probably helps keep costs down and make sure everybody gets where they're going on time and
That's right.
and all of the above.
That's
so
right.
I appreciate that insight. You mentioned as far as the registration process and described, a senior adult calling the 800 number. Is it always the senior themselves that does call or needs to call? Could it be somebody that at least makes the intro on their behalf? How does that work?
Absolutely, and we have caregivers all the time who call on behalf of their care recipient, their mother, their father, their brother, their sister. So it's not always the older adult, but someone in their life who's calling and making those arrangements. Recently, we connected with a caregiver in Columbus, Ohio, who needed transportation for her mother to get to medical appointments and was really feeling like she didn't have options. And we moved that registration through. That remote caregiver in Columbus made all the details, arrangements for her mother, and that's what we're about. We're happy to do it.
Well, and I'm curious, does it come up as an issue from time to time where someone is requesting care for someone who doesn't want it or hasn't made the decision, or is that usually worked out before you get there?
It's usually worked out before we get there.
you would hope, right? Yeah.
We did have a situation where a rider connected with us, and she wanted to go to car dealerships. And it was the second request that we kind of said, well, what's going on here? And by contacting a family member, we were informed that the family made the decision that this older adult needed to stop driving. However, she wasn't ready to make that decision.
Interesting.
We converted her though.
Yeah.
And she stopped going to car dealerships and started using our service.
Excellent. Well, and I think it's important to note that having seen the vehicles that you use, right? I mean, that has to enhance somebody's comfort level, and can you explain what you've done in terms of investing there?
We currently have a fleet of 52 vehicles. All but 2 of them are accessible. So we know about 25% of our ridership has some mobility need that needs to use the lift. They're either in a wheelchair, or walker, etc. So we strive to keep those vehicles in good operating condition. They need to be safe, they need to be clean, and they need to be accessible.
Okay. Well, and I'm curious, especially coming up on the holiday season, obviously somebody may end up seeing this any time of year, but as we're speaking now, we're approaching Thanksgiving and Christmas next month. Does that tend to give an uptick as far as family coming into town and maybe, noticing? Yeah.
Exactly. So as family caregiver or family members come in and visit with their older adults, one suggestion I would make, take a ride with your mom and dad. Ask them to go for a ride and see how safe you feel with them behind the wheel. Perhaps then it's time to have a conversation and then also present the option of senior transportation connection.
Okay.
I think that's an important thing a family member can do around the holiday time.
Okay. So the way to maybe broach the subject and feel out is to ask them to go for a ride. What sort of warning signs, that's a very obvious one, I suppose, is that by, you'd see their safety, but are there other warning signs or things that someone could see, either within themselves to identify that they're having issues or,
Sure. We know that older drivers begin with self-regulating behaviors. That may not be obvious to a family member, but for example, they stop driving at night. They only make right-hand turns. They stay in a smaller radius, a geography that they're comfortable with. But other things that family members can do is take a look at the vehicle. Are there little dents and scratches that are not easily explained? Because it may suggest that there's not safe driving. Okay,
so those are some very specific things to look out for, and as far as things that then a child or caregiver can do about that, obviously going for the ride, what is the 800 number then that they would call or other next steps?
1-800-983-4782.
Okay. And where can people reach you online then as well?
Absolutely. So our website is www.ridestc.org.
Okay. And is there anything else as far as information that you think is important for people to think about or consider or be aware of when it comes to your service?
Sure. I think it's very important to realize the importance of access. Of people being able to get to what they need. Everything can't happen in the home. So the ability to get out and appreciate life and activities and going to lunch is so critically important in the lives of older adults in our community. And they want to be independent. STC has a role to help them be independent as long as possible.
Well, and to stay in their homes as long as
Absolutely.
possible, which I think you have certainly the realities and challenges of the costs of outside care, but I think the heavier burden is the emotional one, you know?
Certainly, certainly. And, you know, survey after survey indicates older adults want to stay home.
Yeah, and live longer when they do,
They
and
do.
have a higher quality of
Yeah.
life. But all that being said, can't spend all of their time inside those four
Sure.
walls, so to speak.
It's just not
Yeah.
healthy to do
Yeah.
that.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for taking some time to sit with me and
Brian,
go
I really
over it.
appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks.